Top 10 takeaways is here. We're here. We're ready. I'm ready for takeaways. I've got a whole list. I've got 10, actually. I've corralled it down to 10. We edited and edited and edited and edited and edited and edit down to 10. Actually, none of that's true. I don't know why I'm lying. I basically had 30 takeaways, and then I just recategorized them so that I could take 30 thoughts and distill it down to 10 so that we could actually have a show title that was accurate. Top 10 takeaways, not the top 30 takeaways, though there are about 30 thoughts that I have for you today. It's an exciting show. It starts with me eating shit. It's always a fun show when I get to eat. Just eat it. Just eat it. You got to eat it, Podfather. I drafted James Cook because he's the starting running back on the Bills, and he's going to score a bunch of touchdowns. And then he went out and had 3 touchdowns. So you need to eat shit. DK Metcalf is an athletic freak. I'm going to draft him no matter what that offense looks like. You got to eat shit. Nico Collins is the alpha in Houston, whether you like it or not, Podfather. Eat shit. And don't forget about Marvin Harrison. I think I was going to list everybody and not list Marvin Harrison, not talk Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison. The Marvin Harrison. The elite Marvin Harrison. Oh, so good. So many fantasy points. So many big plays. Splashy touchdowns. Podfather could eat some shit. These weeks happen, man. The big L weeks are out there. They're hanging out there. I don't think we're going to get an L week like this, though. I mean, all the haters, the Rashad White 2 fantasy points, Marvin Harrison going nuclear with DK Metcalf, James Cook. Enjoy it. Enjoy this week, haters. Enjoy it. That's what I hope. I hope everyone enjoys it. Please enjoy. I'm sure you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of thinking about me being wrong about this particular week's outcomes. Will I be wrong at the end of the season? It's another question. I don't think so. I think that at least one player will prove me wrong. At least one. My guess is right now, as of this moment, there is one player that I think we'll get to the end of the season. We're going to let it play out on a long enough timeline. Most of the L's will wash away, melt away. This is what happens. This is why I don't take L's. We'll take a 1 week. Told you so. I'm happy to receive told you so. It's just like I give told you so. It's happy to receive it. Bring it on. In the chat, I can see it. Bring it on. More. I'm going to sink right in. I'm going to sink down into it. You got to take it. You just got to take it. You dish it out and take it. The one player that I believe will prove me wrong over the course of the whole season is looking like Nico Collins. Nico Collins is for real. Nico Collins is a stud. Nico Collins is the alpha. Nico Collins will not be outproduced by Tank Dell as I predicted. I mean, that is a prediction that I am now completely and utterly underwater on. Nico Collins did the thing I asked him to do, which is go produce against a team not named the Colts, and he did it. Go produce 2 games in a row. He did it. Go produce against top cornerbacks. He did it. Right? Can you produce against other alpha cornerbacks? True alphas. Yes. Okay. Questions, deep questions, important questions have been answered by Nico Collins. Not so much DK Metcalf. Still big looming questions about can this offense sustain 3 fantasy relevant wide receivers, especially if Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we'll talk about in a little bit, is going to get 16 targets. I have questions about that. right? I'm going to let the clock run out on most of these players. I'm not taking any L's. I'm not even taking an L yet on Nico Collins. But if I had to predict the L that I might have to take at the end of the season, it would most likely be Nico. Sure as hell ain't going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay? No. We're going to let the clock run out on Harrison Jr. We're going to let the clock run out on James Cook, and I think we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. Just remember on Nico Collins, I did not say fully fade him. I said you need to be underweight on him. I'm underweight on Nico Collins. He can absolutely beat you. This is a player who, if he is the alpha in Houston, will have numerous spike weeks, and he'll be a player that you look up in tournaments, best ball tournaments, and go, oh, he's beating me. I'm getting single-handedly beaten by Nico Collins. Because I didn't draft him in the third round, I'm now at a disadvantage in this tournament. That could happen. That was the risk. So I said draft him at like a 4% rate, but you can't fully fade him. James Cook, DK Metcalf, on the other hand, a full fade. Full fade. I didn't even fully fade Marvin Harrison. You can't fully fade a guy who's the number 4 pick overall, who's going to be operating in a pretty prolific offense with not a lot of competition for touches and not a lot of defenses that can stop him week to week. So being underweight on Marvin Harrison was the move. Being underweight on Nico Collins was a suggestion that is likely to hurt me at this point. And I'm still fully confident in the DK Metcalf, James Cook, full fades. Avoid, do not draft. Fine with it. Fine with this. One of the cases for not drafting James Cook is that he's 200 pounds. That he just can't hold up if you want to get it's a total dilemma that you face with these small running backs where if they get the workload, great, then you'll get there, but the workload itself will prevent that running back from getting there. Similar case for not drafting Devon Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs. And again, these players were productive this past week. All these players, all these great running backs that you were drafting, exciting running backs in the second and third round that I was avoiding, going hero RB and zero RB. Please, by all means, exhaust yourself running around the track. We'll talk week 17. We'll see if all these early round running backs work out by the end of the year. Kind of doubt it. I doubt it. Feeling pretty good about it. Feeling pretty good. Marvin Harrison is a squeaky wheel. Marvin Harrison was going to get targets this week. We knew that. This was a message that came down from on high. You better give Marvin Harrison targets this week. We knew that. This was the least surprising game from a mediocre, overrated prospect I've ever seen. Is the 50% catch rate, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards for Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, he found a way to have at least one stat, the catch rate stat, to be inefficient, but still, 60-yard boom plays, love it. You got to love it. You got to love it. If you have Marvin Harrison in 4% of your tournament lineups, you got to love it. And by the way, if you tune in to the starter stream show that I do at 8 a.m. every Sunday, tune in 8 a.m. every Sunday, starter stream. I actually had, the funny thing is, if you go back and watch the starter stream show, I nailed it. We nailed it. It was one of the best starter stream shows. And you might think, how's this possible? Because season-long advice for some of these players didn't align with their week 2 performances. But the Sunday morning advice absolutely did, because we had all these people asking the question, should I start Marvin Harrison? And the answer was an emphatic yes. Go check the tape. I said, you drafted Marvin Harrison in the second round specifically to start him against the Rams. And you're not going to not start him just because he underwhelmed in week 1, his first game in the NFL. I don't hate players. I hate ADPs. In Marvin Harrison's case, I do loathe him as a person also. I don't hate him, but I like every other receiver in the NFL more as a person than Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what we'll say. Still starting him. Still had to start him in week 2. So the question, if you think I'm the number one Marvin Harrison hater, who are all these fantasy gamers in this audience that are asking me the question they have? They have one question. You have one shot, one opportunity to get your question answered on Starter Stream. And the question you ask is, do I start Marvin Harrison? They're playing the Rams. This is the whole reason you have Cardinals, to start them when they play the Rams, whether it's James Conner or Kyler Murray or whoever it is. It's just like the reason you have Cooper Kupp is to play him when he faces the Cardinals. And unfortunately, that didn't work out, but that was a great process, even though Cooper Kupp didn't get there. Okay. The problem with Cooper Kupp is he's on the Rams, and he can't play himself. The problem with Marvin Harrison is he's on the Cardinals, and he can't play himself. Though the Cardinals' defense is looking a lot better than the Rams. But that's the one problem. Like, that's the one little aside that we have with these NFC West teams, especially the Rams and the Cardinals. It's like, hey, congratulations. You're in the NFC West. But you're on one of the teams, especially if you're Cooper Kupp. You're on the team everyone wants to play. And you can't play the Rams every week. Imagine if Cooper Kupp could play against the Rams every week. Oh, my God. Imagine what Cooper Kupp's doing in practice every week. Oh, my God. Incredible. Incredible. And I want to say hi to everyone on Instagram. Instagram, we're live. We have a live streaming on Instagram. The chat is lit. Look at this. We have a Nico Collins comment. First comment on Instagram, Nico Collins, of course. Of course, they're paying attention. The people on Instagram are paying attention to my takes, holding me accountable, as you should. You all should absolutely hold me accountable. This is the week. You better get me now. You better get me this week. You better come in strong, get in the chat, get it all off your chest. Just unleash. This is the week. This is the week because I see some injuries coming. I see some benchings coming. I see some underperformances, some underwhelming performances from some players that are actually just average and they're not that good. And some players we've talked about on this show are exactly average. They are the definition of average. And yet a lot of fantasy analysts think they're special. A lot of football fans think they're special. We'll talk about Zach Charbonnet on this show. We'll talk about Trevor Lawrence on this show. We have a lot to talk about. Oh, a lot to get into. I mean, we have one takeaway so far. The one takeaway so far is I was wrong about some players and what I thought they might do in week 2, even though I was actually right about Marvin Harrison. And we have 9 more takes, which is actually closer to 28 to 27 takes coming after this. Hey, you're in your fantasy draft and someone says, hey, that guy's injury prone. I don't want him. And you're like, I don't know. I don't think you can predict injuries. Well, guess what? Now you can. Injury proneness is real. At Player Profiler, we have the data on these players, and it's all in the Injury Finder app. Their injury track record back through time, exactly where they were injured, how severe it is. We look at the BMI data, and we crunch it all together, and we give you probabilities that a player will miss multiple games this NFL season, as well as the complete database of NFL injuries and the ability to compare two players and look at their injury track record. The Injury Finder is powerful, and it's only $5. If it's worth it to have that peace of mind when you're drafting, Go get it. Takeaway number 9. DeAndre Swift is going to have weeks. DeAndre Swift is the buy low in fantasy football. I have a bunch of other buy lows coming up. We'll get into it later. But just right off the top, DeAndre Swift is athletic. DeAndre Swift is like an 80th percentile athlete at the position. He's explosive. He's not committed to the sport of football. He's not going to have a long career. But the Bears overpaid him. They wanted him, even though they have Roshan Johnson. I had to say it. And Khalil Herbert. And even Velus Jones. But they have DeAndre Swift because for whatever reason. And they're just feeding him. They are feeding. He has the size. He's not 200 pounds or 190 pounds. He is actually 210 plus pounds with athleticism and pass catching skills. We saw it this past week, week 2. We saw some receptions from DeAndre Swift. More to come. A lot more to come. Think about it. 19 of the running back opportunities went to DeAndre Swift. Only 5 went to running backs not named DeAndre Swift. That's close to a 75% RB opportunity share in Chicago. And he's delivered the absolute bare minimum fantasy points the last couple weeks. They've been in comeback mode. And so far, they haven't been able to be in a situation where they can sit on a lead, be at least, enjoying some positive game script. It hasn't happened yet. It will happen. So soft defenses are on the horizon. Positive game scripts are on the horizon. And big, hairy fantasy performances from DeAndre Swift are on the horizon. The Bears have invested in the offensive line. They've invested in the quarterback position. DeAndre Swift's going to have weeks. So I'm actively trying to do everything I can to get DeAndre Swift in all formats, Dynasty, everything. Go get him. Go get DeAndre Swift. So that's takeaway number 2. And as an aside, as part of takeaway number 2, it's important that we talk about Roshan Johnson. Roshan Johnson made an appearance in week 2. This is very exciting. He was dressed. He was wearing a helmet. And thank God he was wearing that helmet. Because Roshan Johnson made an appearance on my television. I was like, oh my God, there he is. He exists. He's alive. Proof of life for Roshan Johnson. So here we can replay it, relive it. Proof of life, Roshan Johnson. Here it is on the sideline. We got to see him. It was great. So Roshan Johnson was punched in the face. That was one of the more apropos events to happen on a football field, for me personally, in the history of the NFL. Because I've been punched in the face by Roshan Johnson, because I've been looking very wrong for believing in him, though I will continue to truther for him. Right now, as of this moment, Tyler Johnson is running a bunch of routes and getting some catches in Los Angeles in place of Puka Nacua, a player I loved years ago and I gave up on. I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to continue to truther for Roshan Johnson, even though every day that goes by, every box score I look up where he's not involved, I can't find an opportunity. I can't find a handoff. I can't find a target. I can't find anything except a punch in the face. That is the perfect illustration of me and Roshan Johnson. Punch in the face. Thank you, NFL. Thank you. That's all we needed. But, again, he dressed. He was on the field. We will continue to hilariously and mockingly follow the career of Roshan Johnson in hopes that we somehow luck our way into some touches and then maybe some fantasy points. And then one day, maybe I've got the noisemaker right here. I've got the noisemaker. I've got the dance music. We just continue to tune in. We will continue to check in. Every week we'll check in on Roshan. We'll see how he's doing. Did he get punched in the face? Did he make a tackle on special teams? Was he massaging the shoulders of a coach who was tense? Was he making himself useful in some way? Because he's not on my fantasy team anymore. He is in Dynasty. He is. He's still on the practice squad, taxi squad, whatever squad your format has. I'm not dropping him in Dynasty. No way. No way. And I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. Everyone knows that at this point. I had him ranked higher than anybody. I took him at the 102 in a PPR league. So, I mean, if anyone drafted him at the 101, let me know. But I think 102 is as high as I've seen him drafted. And he insisted that the coaches not refer to his ankle injury as a high ankle sprain or a sprain at all. That he took one of these wicked collisions from the side on the lower leg from Levante David. Just looked gruesome, very painful. He was in a lot of pain. And I think that he was able to officially report it as cramps, right? I mean, this guy, he won't even acknowledge that you inflicted pain on him. He's an absolute warrior. The toughest guy in the NFL for the first time in the history of the league is a wide receiver. It's unbelievable. And now we know that there's a wide receiver who's following in his footsteps, who's bigger, faster, stronger. And that's Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze had a fairly serious knee sprain, relatively serious. It wasn't super serious. It wasn't super mild. It was a medium severity knee sprain. That's a serious injury for anybody. Very, very, very few players would have played on Sunday. Rome Odunze is one of them. And now he is on that Amon-Ra St. Brown track. So remember this moment for years to come when I'm super bullish on Odunze in the years to come, which I will be. This is when it started. This is when it was like, okay, we knew this guy was a dog. We know that he's mega talented, right? That the number one cornerback in the league, Jaylen Johnson, wants to match up with him every day in practice and learn from him. And this is a rookie wide receiver. And now he's going full Amon-Ra St. Brown with his toughness. This is what a wide receiver one. This is what the wide receiver one in the league looks like. If Caleb Williams can develop, then the top wide receiver in fantasy is in Rome Odunze's range of outcomes. So I love that so much about him. We got to take a peek at the early waiver wire. Fractured leg for Isaiah Pacheco. Like, I know you want to celebrate all your second and third round running backs that are at least meeting expectations in week 2, but there's also the problem of Pacheco going to IR. This is why. The fragility of the running back position is one of the starting points for developing zero RB strategy per, Sean Siegel, the originator of the strategy. So it's convenient to talk about Achane. Sure, go ahead. Great. Cool. James Cook, great. Just be happy. They scored a bunch of fantasy points. Be happy. But Pacheco is more the norm. That these guys They take these collisions from all different angles, and a lot more collisions at the running back position than the wide receiver position. And so we're not allowed to be surprised when these things happen. It's explosive running back on a great offense. Pacheco, 7th rounder, just the perfect process play running back. You feel so bad that they lost him and that now he's going to have to fight his way through this. Thankfully, it wasn't a soft tissue. That wasn't a ligament tear, that it was something he can come back from, though it was gruesome. And then you just have to put, Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, cue these guys up. You got to go after these guys on the waiver wire. This is a top offense. It doesn't matter what you think their talent level is. You just got to chase the touches. I know that Steele is a popular guy. He will be certainly on the waiver wire. I haven't fully decided how much I'm willing to bid on him yet. Patreon.com, patreon.com/podfather, patreon.com/podfather. I will post Tuesday morning who I'm bidding on and exactly how much. Steele got the 7 carries. He's the one that came in. Perine was used, but 1 target. Running out and spending all your fab on Steele is understandable, but just be ready. I want everyone to be ready. The touch distribution that happened, the game that the starter gets injured is not necessarily what you're going to see the following week. We can get a whole full week of practice. Pacheco was the main running back in all phases. And Steele was getting all these practice reps when Perine was in Denver. Perine just arrived. He finally has a week to get ramped up with the ones. So I think Perine will be the value on the waiver wire this week, and the guy I'm probably going to be sprinkling above consensus fab bids on, and likely below consensus on Steele. Though I want both of them, that's a sneak peek at what my tactics are going to be and why. But I also want Cam Akers and Dare Ogunbowale. Joe Mixon suffered what was also a difficult-to-watch injury with one of these banned, hip drop tackles. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know what the intent was of the defender. I can't say this guy's a scumbag because I don't know what the intent was. If you punch Roshan in the face, it's on camera. That was your intent. Your intent was to punch Roshan in the face. I don't know if there was any intent to hurt Joe Mixon. But clearly there was a lot of tension between these two teams, which is good. It's football. It's football, man. Injuries happen. Hip drops happen. It's probably some intent there, but I don't know. All I know is you can come back on adrenaline from those injuries, and then what ends up happening is they mispractice, game time decision, don't play. That's typically what happens. That's how that hand plays out week in, week out. It could be that Mixon misses 2 games. Ogunbowale is better in the passing game. Cam Akers is dust. Okay, he's going to get between the tackles, carries, and be fine. In an offense that scores a lot of points, you want that guy, but you also want the guy that's going to be catching the passes out of the backfield. So it's going to be a split backfield, and then Ogunbowale will likely be the better value in PPR leagues on the waiver wire in your fab bidding. The final pickup that I really like this week is actually a wide receiver, and you know how much it pains me to use any fab money on wide receivers. I don't do it. Even last week, I was like, oh, you gotta bid big on Brandon Cooks. Remember Brandon Cooks last week? And I'm sitting there maybe 5% at most. I don't know. Put a lot more on Isaiah Likely. Because wide receiver. Why wide receiver? Because wide receiver. And then what happens? Shocking. Brandon Cooks is inconsistent week to week. There's people that went in on Brandon Cooks on the waiver wire. Mistake. Stop doing that. Stop going in on wide receivers on the waiver wire. However, if there ever was a week, if you needed wide receiver production, if you're 0-2 and you need wide receiver production, this is the week. This is the teed up scenario that we've all been waiting for to bid on a wide receiver on the waiver wire with reckless abandon. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have discipline, and that's why I post my fab guidance on Patreon, patreon.com/podfather. But the Texans are going to Minnesota in a game with a 45-point total, and that's only going to go up throughout the week. This game could crush the total. You have Sam Darnold, who has found his groove, and you have Jaylen Naylor. Jaylen Naylor this week. This is the week where he proved that he can go out, put up close to 15 fantasy points, be efficient, score a touchdown. He's a legitimate starter in the league, and now he's in the plum situation in week 3. I love it. I love Jaylen Naylor this week. I love it. I want to do a whole TikTok on just Jaylen Naylor. I might do it. We talked earlier about the starter stream show, and there was a lot of questions from this audience because a lot of you in this audience went 0 RB, and this was a lot of questions about Ramondre Stevenson, David Montgomery, Brian Robinson. Who the fuck do I start? How do I decide? I got the perfect situation for Brian Robinson. I got the perfect situation for David Montgomery. I got a great situation for Ramondre Stevenson. And then they all go out and we're on the rankings, and I don't know what to do. We've got them projected for the exact same amount of fantasy points, all 3 of them. And I'm hemming and hawing, and I'm embarrassed that I can't decide. I don't even remember what we came down on. I think I insisted on Brian Robinson, and then at the last minute convinced myself to go David Montgomery based on the point total and just the touchdown equity upside available for David Montgomery in that particular game. It ended up being the right call. I think he might have outscored them by 1 point. So it ended up being just a great call, but it illustrated how good our projections were. That we had these guys all clustered and they had the exact fantasy point production all in different ways that aligned with our projections. It was amazing. And then I was right again on the starter stream show. And a lot of it comes back to our new analytics guru that we have here. So we have a new phenom analytics guru, Evan Ringler. So he deserves a real shout out. He is absolutely destroying. He is one of the great young minds in this industry. And already week 2, I was like, man, I trust this guy. I'm pulling up the projections. I'm going to go with this, whatever he says. And I saw it. I saw David Montgomery was like a slot ahead of Brian Robinson. I was like, ah. But I thought that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. That was pretty. And then to see them all score the same. Now, I think there's going to be a running back that's going to join that group who we were also drafting, and that's Zach Moss. Zach Moss has a real Ramondre, Brian Robinson, David Montgomery vibe to him. Got an 80% snap share. The team clearly was not loving what they saw from Chase Brown. Chase Brown gives bad tape. You have to understand, Chase Brown's tape is bad because he has these unforced errors during the game that makes the coaches just scream into a paper bag, because they're like, you could have sent Joe Burrow to the IR with that missed protection. You got to pick up the blitzer there. How are you dropping the pass there? It's maddening for Chase Brown to be this mega producer at Illinois and super athletic, and then to just not have the basics of football wired into him the way so many other running backs are by the time they get to this point. He doesn't have that yet. They tried to give him as many reps as he could possibly handle to try to rewire him, but it's clear to me they're just giving up. They're saying, listen, this is a must-win game. We're playing the Chiefs. Zach Taylor's job is now at risk. And what do? They're like, enough already. We're shelving this Chase Brown experiment. We're not doing it. It's too much risk. We're going with Zach Moss. So I predict, just based on the usage pattern from week 2, we're going to have a Zach Moss in that mix. And we're going to be here 6 days from now. I'll be doing the starter stream show at 8 a.m., and we'll be talking about starting Zach Moss. This is the thing that's going to happen. It's a thing that's going to happen. All right, so I mentioned buy lows. My favorite buy low wide receiver is Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin doubled the number of targets of any other wide receiver on that team, and yet he didn't score a lot of fantasy points just because it didn't work out. Do you think Terry McLaurin forgot how to play football? Unlike Chase Brown, Terry McLaurin's athletic and also wired to win in all quadrants of the football field. It's going to happen for him. It's just the wide receiver position is a volatile position. The upside of Terry McLaurin is astronomical, and he's going to continue to produce. We're going to look back and say, oh man, what a great buy window on Terry McLaurin. I missed it. Yeah, I was doubting. Maybe there's rapport problems with him and Jaden Daniels. Nonsense. It's just luck. It's just variance. I'm all in a McLaurin. Week 3 and beyond. Got to go get him. Easy buy low. Easy buy low. He's been underrated his whole life. He finally has a quarterback, and yet he's still not producing. It's very easy to see league mates giving up on him and you getting him for nothing. You can also now, at this point, you got to put in an offer for Rachaad White. Be like, oh, yeah, this Bucky Irving, man, he's probably going to take over that job. I'm worried, right? Meanwhile, Rachaad White left the game with a groin injury. Baker Mayfield had like 19 pass attempts. So it was a game that you just have to throw out. It's just to throw this game out, forget it ever happened, and go buy low on Rachaad White. And now Dalton Kincaid is a buy low. Oh, yeah. Another 20+% target share. Just didn't quite get the game script. This was a James Cook game. It wasn't a game for the receivers. The top receivers were Kincaid and Shakir, as I think you'll see most weeks. That's how it's going to shake out. So I liked what I saw. Did Dawson Knox, did he get any targets? I don't remember seeing any Dawson Knox. Maybe there were, and I missed them. Did I miss Dawson Knox? Not Dawson. Where you at? Dawson Knox? Anyone? No, I'm looking. Marquez Valdez-Scantling got a target. So did Mac Hollins. So did Keon Coleman. No Dawson Knox targets. This is a good sign. This is a very good sign. Both Shakir and Kincaid together, they were 9 for 9 in that game. But it was, 24-10 at half. So it wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen for them this week. This is get Shakir in deep leagues. Shakir is a great pickup for nothing. Kincaid, buy low. Need to sell high. Takeaway number 4. I don't know. Where are we at? sell high on Kyron Williams. And they go, oh, it's a blowout. He took him off the field. Oh, Blake Corum, he was just in there because they were, they were out of it. Maybe. All I know is Kyron Williams posted another super anemic yards per touch. 3.25. He is now, among qualified running backs, the least efficient in the NFL. And, per the injury finder, likely to get hurt. So, what more? The Blake Corum era will start sooner than any of the Kyron Williams stands are ready for. It's going to be tilting. I can't wait for that tilt. But the tilts have already started fast and furious. I mean, what did we talk about? Yoshivos, spike weeks. Yoshivos outproducing Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase played a full complement of snaps, outproduced by Yoshivos with his 2 touchdowns. But this surprised me. I was like, okay, Yoshivos got the 2 touchdowns we've been talking about, and yet didn't even really go off. 14 points? I mean, how is that even possible? Jamar Chase could have really used those touchdowns, though. Right? You know who else could have used some extra touchdowns? Breece Hall. The Braylon Allen touchdowns were tilting. And then I know you might think, well, okay, he got 24 fantasy points. That's not tilting at all. No. You see, here's the thing. When you draft a running back in the first round ahead of a guy like, say, Justin Jefferson, you're drafting him because there are 40-point games out there that are going to win you weeks. And see, he needs to get the touchdowns that went to Allen to get those 40-point weeks. Otherwise, he's never going to have a 40-point week because it's a shared backfield. And he can only get you 25 points. This was the week. This was the week-winning week. This was the spike week for best ball that you needed from Breece Hall. And then, no. Braylon Allen came in and said, no. I know it's easy to rationalize. Hey, we got there with Breece Hall this week. Great game. 24 points. Could have been so much better if the Jets hadn't drafted Braylon Allen. But Braylon Allen's good. And you're going to be surprised to see where he is on our Dynasty rankings. Go check the Dynasty rankings out. You'll see. He is who we thought he was. A young producer at Wisconsin, and like some of these Wisconsin backs, better receiver than we saw because they never threw it to him. Similar to Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor, better receiver than he was given credit for at Wisconsin. So, Braylon Allen is a buy in Dynasty. He's a buy high. That is a buy high player in Dynasty right there. We're almost to the end. Wow. One of my final takeaways, targets matter. We all know that. But they really do. Jackson Smith-Njigba. Huge game for his Dynasty value. If you can get a 16-target game, what that tells us as analysts about what your potential is in the league, it's gigantic to be able to deliver a 16-target game. It's incredible for Dynasty. The quality rating that you can put now on Jackson Smith-Njigba is significantly higher now that he has a 16-target game. However, like DK Metcalf, I'm not interested in Jackson Smith-Njigba in seasonal leagues. If I'm managing a league, I have no idea who's going to produce in Seattle week in, week out. There was no Kenneth Walker this week. You had bare minimum Zach Charbonnet. Here's the sweet spot game for Zach Charbonnet. This is the game that Kenneth Walker would have been so eager to play in. I'm sure he was infuriated that he couldn't play in this game. And then what does Charbonnet do? 2 yards a carry. And then just the 17 fantasy points, just the absolute bare minimum, low-end RB1, high-end RB2 number in the best possible position where he had got a 100% opportunity share. The RB opportunity share was 100%, unless you want to, do you consider Laviska Shenault? What do you consider Laviska Shenault? Is he a running back now? Embarrassing. You're up in a game. The Seahawks were up at half, okay, against the Patriots, and you can't post more than 17 fantasy points. Just the absolute bare minimum. Kenneth Walker would have had at least one big, long touchdown run in that game. So we continue to wait for Kenneth Walker and just fade Zach Charbonnet. Fade Zach Charbonnet in Dynasty. He's still a year or two away from having a starting job, and even if he does, will he be a workhorse at any point in his career? I haven't seen evidence that he's special in any way. Jackson Smith-Njigba, though, 16 targets. Puts him in a new tier in Dynasty. Zay Flowers, 21 targets so far. And yet, low target depth, not many fantasy points. That's a buy low. Just on the targets alone, that's a buy low in all formats. Zay Flowers not going anywhere. It's going to come for him. Quentin Johnston, he got 2 touchdowns on just a handful of targets. 54 yards, right? So the touchdown rate is high. The rest of the numbers, the peripherals are not good for Quentin Johnston. So that's a sell high if anyone is even gullible enough. Not that anyone in this audience has any Quentin Johnston, but I mean, this is the high watermark for his dynasty value probably ever. And I'm worried about Amari Cooper because he is going to be starved for targets on a team with a mobile quarterback who is struggling as a passer, on a team with an outdoor stadium in the north. You have 2 other SEC receivers in Jerry Jeudy, who's looking like the alpha in Cleveland, and Elijah Moore, who's looking like the 1B. Amari Cooper did get you 8 targets, so I know you might think, well, Amari Cooper, he got 8 targets, it'll come for him. Keep playing him, go trade for him, buy low. No. Amari Cooper, I'm not buying those 8 targets. I'm worried about the targets of the other guys who I know to be quality receivers. If it were me and I were starting a franchise, I would rather have Elijah Moore. I actually think Elijah Moore's a better player than Jerry Jeudy, but the 3 of them are still quality options. And at this point in his career, Amari Cooper is not separating himself enough. Even without David Njoku, this was supposed to be the game to start Amari Cooper. Not good. Not good. So he's a sell low option. Amari Cooper is a sell low option, absolutely. I think you hold on Jerry Jeudy and maybe even in deep leagues, see if you can get some Elijah Moore. Now, we're seeing a number of NFL quarterbacks operating as game managers. Bryce Young, the worst of all. So the worst of all worlds is you're asked to only be a game manager and you can't even do that. You can't even get to 100 yards. So the Carolina Panthers are going to have to blow this thing up. They've got one of these impatient hedge fund owners, and he's embarrassed. He doesn't even want to talk. I mean, I'm sure he's hyper competitive, and everyone's getting fired, and they already know it. Like, if I am in the front office or the coaching staff of the Carolina Panthers, my house is already on the market. Like, it's over. right? It is over. Like, I think David Tepper's already talking to new coaches, new GMs, probably. Justin Fields now a game manager. And we talked about this in the Starter Stream show. I was like, man, Justin Fields, interesting start this week. It's hard to say no to a mobile quarterback after what we saw in week 1 where only the mobile quarterbacks are getting there. And then it was like, you know what? I can't do it. I'm going Goff. I'm going with these pocket passers in great situations. Can't do it. 36-point total. Stop it. You had people asking me, should we start Najee Harris? No! Of course not. Oh, it was awful. I had to make a decision between Chuba Hubbard and Jaleel McLaughlin. It was disgusting. I was disgusted. Stop playing players in these games where no fantasy points are going to get scored. And that includes Justin Fields. They've turned Justin Fields into a game manager. It's absolutely impossible to understand how this happens. They're just so terrified of turnovers. I don't understand it. I don't get it. Hey, you won the game, right? You won the game. So who am I to say? They won, right? They won 13-6. You didn't make mistakes. 117 yards. What was the Justin Fields rushing total? Let's look this up. 27 yards rushing. Just gross. 12 fantasy points. Just disgusting. But you weren't starting him anyway. There were a lot of other options to play this week. If you find the game with the lowest total and avoid that game. Easy. Trevor Lawrence, game manager. And I want to give credit to everyone in fantasy football because I've been calling Trevor Lawrence exactly average. You talked about, who out there is just the most average running back. You give a running back 100% of the opportunities in a game. If he can put up 17 fantasy points, he's absolutely average. That is Zach Charbonnet. The Zach Charbonnet of quarterbacks is Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has been the QB 13 2 consecutive years. He's not getting any better. The Jacksonville Jaguars paid him like a stud quarterback, like a franchise quarterback. He's not. He's a fake stud quarterback. He just has the hair. And at some point, you've got to outperform your hair, and he can't do it. And the funny thing is, I ended up with a bunch of Trevor Lawrence. I got Trevor Lawrence in the Scott Fishbowl. I don't even like him. I don't even want him. But the thing is, this is one of those instances where fantasy gamers, much smarter than NFL GMs, fantasy gamers knew. They knew not to fall for it with Trevor Lawrence. But Jacksonville fans, I know, super hyped about this year. I was like, why? You think Trevor Lawrence is good, really? And then, so it's awkward when you have friends and colleagues that like the Jaguars. You're like, nah, man, he's no good. The team's not going to be good this year. I hate to tell you. Why? You think you think you're going to beat Houston? Really? Even Indianapolis? Please. I'm not so worried about the situation in Miami because Tua has always been a game manager. Tua's not that good. There's no special qualities with Tua. We know he's not that accurate down the field. It's just that when you have Waddle and Tyreek Hill, it wallpapers over a lot of flaws. I have confidence in some coaches to make good decisions with their backup quarterbacks and have those quarterbacks prepared. I don't do a lot of, leading with the coach as the reason why I'm making decisions. In this particular case, the coach matters. I think Mike McDaniel is one of the few coaches that I would trust that he's going to put a quarterback like a Skylar Thompson in a situation where you can just keep starting Tyreek Hill, keep starting Jalen Waddle without fear. We've seen Tom Savage in Houston continue to allow and support DeAndre Hopkins to produce at wide receiver 1 levels. So if Tom Savage can do it, Skylar Thompson can do it. Even with Jalen Waddle, it's a very unique situation where you have just these two receivers are it. Yeah, Jonnu Smith had a week, but it's these two receivers are it. There's not a tight end that's really commanding a lot of targets. There's not a number 3 wide receiver that's commanding a lot of targets. You're getting a lot of targets commanded recently by Devon Achane. I don't think that's going to be the case as much. I think that Thompson's going to lock in on his 2 receivers. That's my prediction. So I'm going to keep starting Waddle. I'm thinking ahead of what the questions are going to be in the Starter Stream show, and I'm answering them now. Starting Waddle. The Saints are the most shocking franchise in the NFL right now. I am shocked. I asked so many guests. First coach to be fired, Dennis Allen. First coach to be fired, Dennis Allen. And then after week 1, no credit. Oh, they played the Panthers. And now we see the Panthers are bad. The Panthers are what we thought they were. And yet, there go the Saints, crushing Dallas. So just because they crushed a team they should crush doesn't mean they're not going to crush the next team, and they did. It was amazing. I mean, amazing. Everyone needs to issue an apology to Dennis Allen, including myself. I'm sorry, Dennis, to your family, to yourself, everybody associated with you, the entire Saints organization. Apologies from the Podfather. I did not realize you were this good. And the funny thing is, Dennis Allen's position is now more secure than Zach Taylor's, which is just amazing, right? And I checked in with, Barstool Joe, my friend Barstool Joe. And Barstool Joe was drafted on Fast Draft this year, best ball. Draft 6, start 4, fastdraft.app. And he sent me a screenshot of one of his teams, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Alvin Kamara. I was like, what? And it's like, he's like, last time I checked, these guys are all superstar studs, and I can get them, all of them, because others are drafting Puka Nacua and one-year wonder guys. Okay, I'll take them. I'll take the proven studs. You guys can go with the flash paper receivers. And it's paying off. It is paying off. And it wasn't just Barstool Joe, remember, though. Rich Rebar came on and said the running back he's building around in a hero RB build is Alvin Kamara. Easy to forget. For many years, it was Kamara and McCaffrey. Those were the satellite back plus players that we were just so hungry for in drafts. Top 5 picks year after year. Then Alvin Kamara goes out of favor because he's on the Saints. McCaffrey's on the 49ers, so he stays in favor. He's the 101. And now, it's going to be very difficult for Christian McCaffrey to outproduce Alvin Kamara from the IR position. Yeah, we did run the Injury Finder app promotion on this show for a reason. That was a strategic decision was made. And finally, the final takeaway, tight end, man. Tight end's tough. Tight end is tough. Tough stuff from the tight end position. What happened on Sunday? A tight end didn't produce because he pulled a hamstring in warmups. This was a tight end that we thought was reliable. This was one of those rock tight ends. He hasn't been injured in years. Now, he had a lot of hamstring injuries years ago with the Giants, but that was all behind him. Evan Ingram. Right? Meanwhile, the tight end you really wanted, the tight end that Theo Greminger told you to draft, And we did draft him. We did draft him in the Kings Classic because of Theo. And so, all credit to Theo. Theo's a stud. He gets it. A rookie tight end did something I've never seen, and let me know in the chat. Let us know in the comments. Has anyone seen this? Has this happened before? The Elias Sports Bureau, did they verify that this has never happened? A rookie tight end going 9 for 9? Has that ever happened? That is amazing. Brock Bowers is amazing. And when you go to Player Profiler and you go to Dynasty Deluxe and you pull up the Dynasty rankings, nestled into that number 1 spot, the tight end 1 in Dynasty is Brock Bowers. From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to PlayerProfiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, Data Analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.